I'd like to call this meeting of the Recycled Water Committee of the Monterey One Water to order. It is Thursday, August 15th, 2024 at 3:05 p.m. Present with me are Kent Habino and Ron Stefani, and we do have a quorum today. So we're going to go ahead and proceed as our colleagues come in. Let me ask for a formal roll call.
Rhonda,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
Marina Coast, Monterey, Pacific Grove.
Here. And I'll go to item 3. Any additions to the agenda? Anyone have anything?
No additions.
Okay, and we'll move right on to item 4. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. We'll proceed as stated in the agenda. We'll move on to general public comment, item 5. This is comment on matters that are not appearing on today's agenda. So at this time, I'll ask if there's anyone in the virtual audience that wishes to make a public comment on general public comment. I don't see any yet. Okay, and there are no members of the public for the record in the chamber, so we'll go ahead and move on to item 6, which is approval of the minutes. And I'll entertain action on that item.
Move approval of the minutes. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call or voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. And now we're into the substantive portion of the events here. We'll move on to item 7. And I gotta find the
Your mic. That better? Thank you.
we'll go on to Mr. Guzman on item 7.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. Excuse me, Jose Guzman, Operations Manager. On August 28th, 2023, the board approved 4 chemical procurement contracts associated with the operations of the Advanced Water Purification Facility. The contracts were up to supply and deliver calcium chloride, sodium bisulfite, sulfuric acid, and sodium hypochlorite required to treat up to 5 million gallons per day of product water. The contracts expire in September 2024. However, the contracts allow Monterey One Water the option in its sole discretion to extend the term of each agreement for 3 additional one-term years. If the contracts are extended, it shall be increased based on the producer price index for commodity, for chemicals and allied products, but not to exceed 10%. 3 of the chemical contracts costs remained the same as the original. And the exception was the sulfuric acid contract, which increased by 7% or $33,649. And I can explain a little, the reason that chemical saw an increase is because one of the major local producers, Simplot in Lathrop, is actually closing this month. It did create somewhat of a supply issue, and then who is it that got this one? Brentag. It's going to cost additional in transportation because they're having to get from further suppliers. So that's why that one did have that 7% increase. The recommended action is that the Recycle Water Committee recommend that the board approve the first amendment to Brentag Pacific for the calcium chloride, sodium bisulfate, and sulfuric acid contracts and the not to exceed amount of $973,450.28. In addition to Univar Solutions for sodium hypochlorite in the not to exceed amount of $363,802.50 for a combined total of $1,337,252.78. I am here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the report. Any committee member questions? I'll just check online to see if there's any public comment on this item. Don't see any hands raised, so we'll go ahead and come back. There's no, again, for the record, there's no members of the public in the chamber. And I'll bring it back to the board or the committee for action.
Move.
Yes.
Move for approval.
Oh, thank you. You have a motion by Director Urbino for approval and a second by Director Stefani. Any discussion on the motion?
As a heads up, I'll abstain just because I walked in on this presentation late.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Williamson. Okay, and I'll take a roll call vote on this. The abstention.
Rhonda,
Yes.
Castroville, Marina Coast, Monterey,
Abstain?
Pacific Grove.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 yes, 1 abstention.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Guzman, and I think you're up again on item 8.
Correct. I will be presenting item 8 again. So good afternoon, Chairman Smith and the committee. The advanced water purification facility requires the use of hydrogen peroxide as part of the UV-AOP disinfection process, which provides 6 of the required 12 log inactivation of virus credits and other pathogens. In addition, the AWPF also requires sodium hydroxide used as a cleaning agent and for pH adjustment. The existing contracts will expire in September 2023, and there are no remaining options, 2024, and there are no remaining options to extend. Therefore, M1W published a notice inviting bids on July 5th, 2024 for both chemicals, which allowed bidders to bid on one or both of the chemicals. On July 31st, 2024, M1W received 2 bids for sodium hydroxide and 1 bid for hydrogen peroxide, realizing a cost savings of almost $70,000 as compared to the existing contracts. Univar was the lowest bidder for sodium hydroxide, and Brentag was the sole bidder for the hydrogen peroxide. The recommended action is that the Recycle Water Committee recommend that the board awards contracts to Brentag Pacific for hydrogen peroxide in the not to exceed amount of $75,557.30, and to Univar Solutions for a not to exceed amount of $118,784.79 for a combined total of $194,342.09. I am here to answer any questions you may have on this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman. I'm looking at public online. I don't see any members of the public online that aren't affiliated with the organization. So I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and action.
Move approval.
We have a motion by Director Williamson and a second by Director Stefani. Any discussion on the motion?
The price is going down.
Yeah, and actually that just, it does shed some light. That was directly a result of us just simply switching to a bigger tank as part of expansion. So we're able to go from small tote loads to bulk loads. So it makes a big difference in the transport and procurement.
Great, thank you. So I'll go ahead and take a voice vote on this one. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Guzman. We'll move on to item 9, and that'll be Johanna Vargas.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Johanna Vargas, Grants and Contracts Administrator. Monterey One Water is the program administrator for the Monterey Regional Stormwater Program. The program member entities include the City of Carmel, Delray Oaks, Monterey, Pacific Grove, Sun City, Seaside, and the County of Monterey. The overall of the stormwater program has been to develop, implement, and administer a consistent stormwater pollution prevention program. It also includes a regional approach to the development and implementation of public education and outreach program. All of this is needed to fulfill the State Water Resources Control Board state small municipal separate storm sewer system permit. The stormwater program approved their fiscal year 24-25 budget in the amount of $415,490 at the June 26, 2024 meeting. And that budget included a contract to provide outreach services and public education to for Save the Whales in the amount of $132,243. The recommended action is that the Recycle Water Committee recommend that the board approve a contract amendment for the Monterey Regional Stormwater Management Program, Public Education and Outreach and Public Involvement Participation Services to Save the Whales in the not to exceed amount of $132,243. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Any board or committee member questions? Yes, Director Williams.
These are positions with Save the Whales, not with M1W.
Right.
We're funding.
Right, this is a contract for Save the Wells under the stormwater program.
And the stormwater program is funding this contract.
Yes.
Monterey One is not. We're just the administrative entity.
Was this something that was can you describe the history a little bit with the relationship with Save the Whales?
You want me to do it? or-
That would be great.
So the Mr. Swint Monterey Regional Stormwater Management Program has been around for a while to take care of that long permit that she just talked about, which I've always referred to as the MS4 permit. So it's nice to know where all those S's came from. We agreed, was it 15 years ago? Plus 13 years ago, that their program manager would be an employee of Monterey One Water. So he sits here, the checks roll through, or the, his payment roll through Monterey One, but it's funded by all those member entities that she just referenced. In addition to the program manager, there is the consulting and the things, the outreach, Save the Whales, to do certain identified tasks to meet their permit requirements. And that's sort of how it's been structured. We are moving through some changes right now where we're splitting some positions with the Mr. Swint program. They'll still have 2,080 hours a year available to them, but we're also going to have some resources available to us. So it's just a little different than it has been in the past, but predominantly the same. And we actually meet with all your cities. I mean, there's representatives from each of the cities on the board, or I guess, I don't know what you call it. Management committee, thank you. To sort of guide everything that happens. So you do have input, all of them, Carmel, Seaside, Sand City, et cetera, Delray Oaks.
Great. Thank you.
Just check online. I don't see any additional public attendees here or online. So if there, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and action on the item.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. And any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Sounds like a really great program. Where are we here? Oh, we're on 10. Okay, hold on. That brings us to item 10. And I'll ask Mr. Valadeo to report.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. My name is Jerry Valadeo, Associate Engineer. In March of this year, the board approved a construction contract with Mountain Cascade for the CP 356 four-door interceptor repair project in the total amount of $2,253,624. This project is currently under construction. During an inspection of the headworks from the influent junction structure to the grit chambers bifurcation structure, it was determined that the plastic liner protecting the structure from hydrogen sulfide corrosion is peeling back at the seams and needs to be replaced. And I included attachment number 1, which provides some photos of the damaged or failed liner bond or plastic liner. Monterey One Water staff determined that it would be best to remove the entire plastic liner system and replace it with a liquid applied coating system. The liquid applied coating system will provide a monolithic coating system with no seams or joints to prevent hydrosulfide gas from penetrating the coating system. Mountain Cascade is currently mobilized at the regional treatment plant for the CP 356 project, which includes shutting down the headworks to replace a section of the four-door interceptor. This will create an excellent opportunity to simultaneously replace the coating material in the headworks and minimize disruption to the plant operation. Monterey One Water requested a quote from Mountain Cascade to perform this work. The cost to perform this work is $501,876. Staff recommends a 10% contingency of $50,187 for any unforeseen circumstances for a total not to exceed amount of $552,063. So this is an excellent value of soliciting bids from other contractors, as a separate project would have required another expensive headwork shutdown, making the project more expensive, disruptive to plant operations, and sending additional rags downstream into the plant. Monterey One Water has an ongoing capital improvement project for corrosion control with remaining budget that will be used for this work. A budget adjustment form is attached to the staff report. Staff requests that the Recycled Water Committee recommend that the board approve a construction contract amendment to Mountain Cascade to replace the headworks coating as part of the CP 356 four-door interceptor repair project in amount of $501,876 with a 10% contingency for a total and not to exceed amount of $552,063 and authorize a budget transfer of the same amount. Now, this will result in a total contract amount of $2,805,687 for CP 356. Now, I'll have to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Valdo. I actually do have a question. So you have attachment 1 here. And so my understanding is that the project would be you can see that the photos that are badly damaged, badly corroded, worn out concrete. So is the project to coat that or repair that area right there?
Yeah, it's basically to peel that liner bond off that's coming apart, is exposing the concrete, and then doing the surface prep, remove it, doing sandblasting, build it back up, the concrete where needed, and then coat it.
Okay, got it. Okay. For any other committee member questions? Yes, Director Romero.
Did Mountain Cascade, did they offer any ideas in terms of how long this coating would last?
It's gonna happen during the shutdown. It increased the shutdown time additional 7 days, so it'd be 42 days, calendar
Did they
days.
give you a lifetime?
Lifetime.
Oh, lifetime,
expectancy?
sorry.
Yeah, the span.
They haven't given me a lifespan, but it should be, I would say 25 years.
Yeah, so it sort of depends. The stuff can last for, like Jerry said, 25 years. Some of it is how well we code it and if we have the opportunity to do inspections. So hypothetically, if we schedule it every 5 years to shut down the headworks, get in there and do inspections to make sure that there are no pinhole leaks or separating at joints. I've actually had, and actually it was fun. So I'm gonna say I've had the pleasure of working in a bunch of areas like this and repairing or inspecting coating, and the failure modes are so many because of that hydrogen sulfide gas, which ultimately converts to sulfuric acid. It truly, the long life is incumbent upon inspection and maintenance. If you just let it go, you're going to end up with this stuff. If you keep on top of it, it'll last a long time.
And on a related note, I think it might have been 2 months ago, the board approved the hydrogen sulfide control program. USP Technologies was awarded a contract, and they're actually right now in the process. They started yesterday of doing a 48-hour sampling event to identify those peaks in H2S and how they can help better control it. One likely scenario is we have a chemical pump station at Monterey that supplies spares for the peninsula side and one at Salinas. We're likely going to make a small pump station, a chemical dosing station at Castroville because they think some of those peaks may result from Castroville. So that'll help extend the life of the repair.
Great. Yeah, Director Williamson.
One quick question. It looks like there's going to be a budget adjustment. What are we looking at in regards to the amount that we actually allocated versus the ask?
Yeah, the total amount, I mean, the new total amount, well, the original amount was $2,253,624, but the increase now is going to be $552,063. So total will roughly be, this is not to exceed $2,805,687, which includes contingency. So it may be less than that, but that's
Jerry, may I answer the question a different way? I need to emphasize that we have an established line item in our capital improvement program for corrosion control. It's one of these items where we set aside $750,000 a year for activity just like this. We're proposing to use that budget for this. This will be the big corrosion control project this year.
And so what's the delta between the two, between what was originally approved in the budget versus with the line
This is about $200,000 less than what was budgeted.
so what is the, I'm maybe confused, what is the budget adjustment for needed then for?
So
It's the moving of money. It's the moving of money from the line item for corrosion control over to the existing capital project budget for the contract
Okay.
that we let to Mountain
Thank
Cascade.
you. That was, I was reading it wrong. Thank you for that clarity. And obviously this is really important. I mean, I know we've been talking about this for some time now, so I'm glad to see that this is moving forward.
Great. Yeah, and so I don't see any members of the public wishing to comment at this time, and I'll bring back to the board for action discussion, further discussion.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. This passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks for doing the important work and keeping our infrastructure up to the times as we do in all these, as you all do in these areas that we have here at Monterey One. And what brings us to item 11? And that's Mr. Holden. This is the big ticket item for the day, I would say.
I don't think so. I think it's completely
Good, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yes. So, yes, Chair Smith and members of the committee, I'm Bob Holden, Principal Engineer. So I brought this to you in May. There was some questions that came up from both the city and Monterey County Water Resource Agency. Oh, give me the first slide, please. So we pulled it from the board in May. We've met with Monterey County Water Resource Agency 3 times, City of Salinas once, lots of emails and stuff. We've responded to their, yes, thank you. We've responded to their questions. There were questions from this committee about the Prop 218 and Prop 26 compliance. And we found out that there has been a recent California Supreme Court case that sort of redefines some of the terms involved in those propositions. So we're covered by Prop 26 requirements, but we don't have to go through the Prop 218 process of notifying voters, having all those things. So we've gone through that. We've enhanced the data and the calculations, sort of gone through till this week. And then we've, in response to Water Resource Agency's questions about accounting, we've developed some consistent revenue transfer approaches to what we're going to do with money we receive from this fund, where it goes. So we've made that really pretty clear. And then, so they're going to show you 3 tables. This is the special user rate. So this is unchanged. This is an item that is established by ordinance every 3 to 5 years whenever we do the rate increases. It only changes, well, based on which fiscal year you're in, and then on the total biochemical oxygen demand, the total suspended solids, and the total flow. So that table is what we charge sort of a non-normal user, so not a residence or some of the easy things that we have to calculate, things like car washes, hospitals, I don't know, anyway, commercial, industrial situations which aren't standard, very large hotels. So that's what we charge to treat water in those circumstances. In those situations, we would also charge a capacity fee, or can't remember the new term for it.
Connection fee, capacity fee.
Okay, yeah. So that's unchanged. The next slide is the incremental rates. So these apply to backwash waters. And these have not changed. We've established those as 7% of the special user rate. So they do vary because they have different flows or strengths in different, well, these are all per acre foot. So it's all for 1 acre foot of water, but they have different strengths. So they're different values for that water. But it's unchanged and it's 7% of the special user rate. And then finally, the agenda packet you have has incorrect numbers, I'm sorry to say, that will be corrected for the board. The upper layer, the upper row there is table 1, a replacement of table 1 from your agenda packet, and the lower row is table 3 from your agenda packet. So these are then the upper row are the interruptible rates. So again, for the new source waters, reclamation ditch, Blanco drain, Salinas industrial wastewater, and the Salinas Pond 3. Again, they're related to the flow and strength of the wastewater. And we charge these rates when we can use these new source waters for recycling. So if we can't use the water for recycling, we don't accept it. That's how it's an interruptible rate. That's how we can justify a lower rate. And then the lower row are the fixed cost, the cost for loans, insurance, the various things that we're charging that we have to pay regardless of whether any water is taken or not. And so those are the fixed cost for the 4 different source waters there. And those, vary depending on how much the original facilities cost and lots of other factors, which are in the agenda. So I am requesting that you would recommend that the board approve the updated interruptible source water rates and fixed costs and incremental rates for the backwash water to be applicable from September 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for the report, and I'll entertain committee member questions on interruptible rates. Any questions? Director Habina?
Is there a table on here that shows the percent differences or the dollar amount differences?
Oh, between the numbers I just showed you and the numbers in the agenda packet, is that what you're asking?
Is it in the agenda packet? Yeah.
So you want the percent difference between what it currently is
Right,
versus
right.
where it's going?
Yeah.
We don't have that in here. We can do that. So what we're currently charging this last fiscal year for this upcoming fiscal year, because it's fairly substantive. Ballpark, it was $130 for an interruptible rate for a Pond 3 water now, and it's going up to, what is it, 437? Isn't that?
Yeah, I don't really remember. So yes, so what happened?
And so we can do that.
Right. we
for
can do
the
that
board meeting?
For the board, yes.
See the percent, well, the dollar and percent increase from what we're currently at to what we're moving towards. And then, of course, Bob's memo has all those justification on why that occurred. So just to emphasize a point he made, what's in the staff report, it's under by a few dollars each. So he's updating it. That increase has been conveyed to both Water Resources and the city of Salinas. So frankly, you guys were the only ones that were surprised. They understand what is happening and have concurred with what Bob and Allison are doing.
Yeah, I just would mention though that we, last June, we did continue the rates from the previous year. We didn't, so this is a 2-year increase.
Yep.
Any other questions? I have one question. So what is how is our positioning with stakeholders on this? Is everything going well as far as their acceptance of these, increased rates, probably due to rising costs, prices, and all kinds of other things?
Yeah, I'll let you guys talk about your specific meetings. I did have a chance to talk to Ara at the Water Resources Agency, and he was satisfied with what he was shown. I think we also state that, as always, we're open to those discussions as time goes on, if and when they have questions. This is not, slamming the door forever. That there will continue to be a back and forth because it's pretty complex when you dive into it, as you saw. So that's the feedback I've received from Water Resources Agency. How about Salinas?
Yeah. You want to talk about that?
So like Bob said, we met 3 times with staff from the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. The first time they did have some pressing questions that we worked on responding to. We met again with them after they had a chance to kind of digest our responses and think through it a little bit more. And then we met a third time. Ara was back. I think he wasn't involved in the first 2 meetings, so he got to be involved in the third meeting. And at the end, I think I felt like were happy with the way we responded. We also met with David Jacobs at essentially the same time when we were able to meet with Ara. And he also understood, his one comment was just to make sure that Monterey County Water Resources Agency staff was happy. So that was a good feedback from him.
And David is the Public Works Director at the City of Salinas.
That's good. Director Moore.
So I'm assuming that our basic principle behind figuring out these rates is that we don't overcharge them. We charge them fairly for our costs, both direct and a share of our indirect costs that can't be directly attributable to those activities. I guess I do have a little bit of concern when you said that last year we simply continued the previous year's rates. But my sense is in the industry, the folks who sell us chemicals and so forth didn't say, oh, you've kept those rates the same for Salinas, so we're not going to raise any of our prices. We've had inflation going on. So did we potentially take a bit of a loss, which of course then only gets made up by other customers, which we should not be doing? And if so, what was it, roughly speaking? I mean, we can eat little losses and we know there's some uncertainty anyway in coming up with the absolute right costs. I get that.
So the short answer is yes, we didn't cover our costs. Or no, we didn't cover our costs. So as we mentioned, Pond 3 is just one of the 4 interruptible rates, and that's $130 an hour or per acre foot for the last few years. It's jumping up to $430. So that obviously in the last year or so, it's increased. Now, this isn't all due to chemical increases in power and things. It's looking at the system as a whole. In terms of, I don't know if we've quantified what our overall loss could have been for the waters received in 23 or 22.
Well, so I think this will be reassuring, Paul, if you don't mind, I'll just
Please.
kind of explain. A majority of the costs associated with these diversion facilities is parked into the Pure Water Monterey Fund, Department 58. And that's really the core of the beneficiary for the work. So we are putting the costs that we have incurred into the Pure Water Monterey Fund in general. There were some small time periods when we entered into agreements with the city and with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency when they wanted us to take industrial wastewater or they wanted us to take the Pond 3 effluent. And so in those circumstances, Paul and the city manager at the city of Salinas had entered into, in one case, an emergency agreement where they paid us back. And in another case, it was based on the 2021 Water Resources Agency need for more water. So in general, the costs that we've incurred were parked essentially in the correct place. And we were able to, not overburden the wastewater ratepayers.
In terms of what that delta was, though, do we have any idea of what?
No, there's a small amount of the interruptible rate that is increasing, based on different factors that Bob can talk about. And it's in the staff report, there's sort of line items. And the biggest one that we probably would need to sort of correct is the electricity that we spent at the Pond 3 pump station and at Blanco Drain, and mainly because those two facilities were used and it was based on a PG&E rate from a couple years ago. There wasn't a lot of costs on those two facilities for chemicals. The chemical costs are really only applicable. The chemical costs that are outside of our treatment facility at the RTP are really just for taking the industrial wastewater directly and the ferric. And so those were captured in Paul's agreement with Monterey County Water Resources Agency.
I was thinking a bit more globally, when I just used chemicals as the first thing that came to my brain that might be something we needed in this, but electricity and labor and so forth also take these hits. So I could see that there's a fair amount of effort to recalculate these rates, but we could do that every year, or we could build into the agreements, although I'm not sure we have a permanent agreement yet on this, some engineering cost record increases, or we could do a true up and retroactively look to see what we collected versus what our real costs were. And they could be potentially lower, and maybe Salinas gets a rebate under a true up, but I don't know which of those.
So
three.
certainly, my preference at this point is that we do move forward with updating what we have in terms of looking at some of those details. There are a number of variables that we'd have to go back and drill down into, and we can do that. But from just trying to keep this clean, if the board, the committee would like, we would like to move forward with this because it's been a long time coming. And we absolutely recognize some of those nuances that you state, Tom. Even beyond that, and we can have those discussions. Okay. Thank you.
If I may add, I mean, Bob is being a bit humble here. The calculations that went into these numbers that we have in front of you today involved him building a fairly sophisticated spreadsheet that could be used in the future to input all of those changing factors, the changing costs of chemicals, labor, power, the strength of the various wastewater streams.
Right.
So we now have a tool going forward that I believe will accomplish what you're asking for in subsequent years.
Yeah, I'd add, yes, and I would recommend that we update it annually. And specifically for Pond 3, previously all these rates were based on estimates, budget items and estimates.
Right.
This year it's based on actual. And so whereas last year the estimate for pumping water from Pond 3 was less than $100 an acre foot. This year, it's, I can't remember, $300 or $400 an acre foot. The actual PG&E cost to pump that water. So that's why there's this substantial difference. But again, this spreadsheet is all set up so that I don't have to do it in the future. And so that it's, yeah, you can just plug in tells you what numbers to plug in and you'll get a result.
Don't accidentally overwrite that spreadsheet, please. Keep it back up somewhere. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take it out to the public online. Does anyone? Let me just take it out and I'll bring it back. Take it out to the public real quick. See if anyone would like to speak to this topic. Seeing none and no one in chamber, I'll take it back to Director Hibino.
I noticed on some of the variable cost, the chemical cost on the sulfuric acid. Since we did just talk about it, Jose just talked about it, is that reflected these new pricing? Because it's so scarce right now, has that been reflected in these numbers?
No, it's based on, now everything's based on actual cost. So it's actual costs from the past that are then inflated by the, with an inflation factor.
But it's not the numbers that you just recommended for the board to approve. It's the old ones plus an escalator.
Plus an escalator, right?
That's it.
Thank you. And any additional comments or any motions on this?
Move approval.
There we go. All right. We had a motion and a second on this for the recommended action on this interruptible rates topic. And I'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Holden. Was a fairly complex topic, I would say. So move it up to the big board and we'll see what happens. It's looking good.
Thank you.
All right. Now we are at staff reports.
Yeah, so just a couple quick things. Today's Thursday. On Tuesday, I was at the Board of Supervisors meeting. There was an item on the Water Resources Agency audit that the third-party auditor presented to the Board of Supervisors. R and I were there to answer any questions. We will be doing the same thing to the Monterey County Water Resources Agency Board on Monday, and then it'll be come to our board at the end of the month. We won't have the auditor do the presentation. It'll just be R and myself going over it with our board. I have a quick question. Are you guys going to talk about the electrical swap that happened at the plant, as well as the issue that you resolved at the Monterey pump station?
Yeah, you
Just
want to
overview?
coin or?
I'll take both if you want me to.
I'll give an update on the electrical gear. So I think you can all agree that the single most critical need for the RTP to operate properly is, reliable power source. So Daryl Harris, the utilities and maintenance manager, and his team since last Monday have been replacing the 21 kV switch gear and one of the transformers. That gear was original to the plant. We had some rebuilds on the transformers, but this is a complete swap. And then the one that we removed, we're rebuilding and then replacing the existing. Needless to say, we were running in island mode for a while, and then we've been switching back to utility power, finalizing some tests today. So everything's going well. And hopefully by end of today, we'll be back to our cogen powering the facility with all the switch gear commissioned with the help of Eaton. So we're finishing on schedule.
That was a tremendous issue. I mean, you imagine taking that entire plant, which you guys have all been to, and going, yeah, we're going to just disconnect from PG&E for a bit, have our cogen and backup generators, and then they got a bunch of other backup generators to back up ours, because you're in a world of hurt if things go down. So the staff did a phenomenal job of getting this done actually quicker than we thought they would. Like they beat the schedule by
Well, we were well ahead of schedule, but there was a holdup on Eaton's side with
Oh,
some
okay.
programming. We were on schedule to finish about 4 to 5 days early. And now we'll be finishing probably a day early. So we lost a little bit of time.
But I mean, having the entire plant on gen sets, I mean, I know Jose was nervous the whole time, as was I, and just going, how is it? What's going on? But they did an incredible job, bottom line.
Yeah, and the next update, a reminder, we have a very large project going to upgrade 2 of our major sewage lift stations, one at Monterey pump station. That's the big pump station near the Naval Postgraduate School, right on the beach there, Del Monte Beach. And then the Seaside pump station. And these upgrades include replacement of mechanical components, valves, addition of valves, et cetera. And when you do that kind of work, it requires a bypass of the flow. Sometimes in the middle of the night, we'll go in the middle of the night and they'll set up temporary pumps inside the wet well side of the pump station just to move the sewage around the dry well so they can do these mechanical improvements. And we had an incident last week where after a week-long bypass, on Tuesday morning, we were returning back to using our pumps, and we went to turn on our pumps and they did not start. This was about 3 o'clock in the morning when this happened. And so we had to revert back to using the temporary pumped bypass, and it appeared to be working well. But about 6 hours later, it turned out there was a blockage in the bypass pumping. And so many people mobilized, including our operations staff, the contractor, the contractor's bypass pumping subcontractor. And after a while, they figured out what was causing the blockage. They removed the blockage and got the sewage moving again. But it was much too close of a call. The water levels in the wet well rose to a point where it was rising in the sewer lines leading into the wet well. Much too close of a call. Fairly close to having a sewage spill. And so we are closely evaluating what went wrong, what could be done differently in the future so that we don't repeat this, especially with the next pump station, which is the Seaside pump station. So wanted you to be aware of the incident. Fortunately, has turned into a learning opportunity, and it wasn't a sewage spill, but these are one of those things that occasionally happen during construction, and we just do our best to learn from it and not let it happen again. So I'd be glad to elaborate, ask any questions that you may have. I will emphasize that at the Monterey pump station, it's actually an old treatment plant, and there is an old structure there, an old underground structure. And in that case, probably the worst thing that would have happened is we would have pumped sewage into that structure and contained it into that structure. It probably would have required many hours, if not days, to fill up that structure. So leaving that old treatment plant structure in place is kind of a belt and suspenders approach at that particular lift station, pump station. But still, we don't like to use those types of facilities unless absolutely necessary. So
Yes, Director Marcus.
So that blockage, did they get that rubber ducky out intact? Or
No ducky was harmed in this
No
process.
ducky.
Any further staff reports today?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay, committee member reports. Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the staff again for all the work you do, and meeting adjourned.